So let's start with you just kind of talking about what is holistic medicine, what does your practice do, what do you do in your practice, and what do they need to know about these areas?
So how many people are familiar with holistic medicine? Just to get a reading. Okay, cool. It's becoming so trendy now. I feel like health creation is becoming such a big deal. I don't know if you guys have heard of like bulletproof coffee and paleo diets, and there's everything with meditation and all of that good stuff now. So I feel like it's getting a better name for itself. And now there's so much research to back it up. It can be really, really interesting and a really good integration with conventional medicine. So in my practice, basically what I do, I see people, all kinds of people. I'll see professional athletes, I see a lot of counselors, a lot of psychiatrists, a lot of students. But basically what I do with them, it's even though I'm seeing a wide variety of people with a lot of different kind of constellations of symptoms, like maybe insomnia, anxiety, maybe they also have digestive issues as well. And then they also have personal goals that are important to them. But basically what I do, even though I'm seeing a wide variety of cases, I'm pretty much going through the same process with each and every person. And that's basically creating a comprehensive, personalized treatment plan for each and every person. So basically what it looks like when you come into my office, the first session is about 75 minutes. Before the first session, I'll have patients send me all of their lab work, all of their kind of what's worked, what hasn't, their diagnoses from other doctors, everything that they're looking to work on. And in that first session, it's about 75 minutes, and I just go through a really thorough intake. I ask a ton of different questions, everything ranging from mindset to what they're eating, what they're putting in their bodies. I ask a lot of lifestyle questions, like how are you sleeping at night? What does your energy production look like? I ask a lot of questions in terms of, their systems in and of themselves. So, for example, digestion. I want to know about cognitive function. Today's talk, energy focus, motivation, and drive. That's all extraordinarily important and a really key piece for me to understand as we move forward. And so I ask a ton of different questions, everything about relationships and what their spiritual backgrounds look like. Because all of it is important because it's all tied into them and how they perceive health and what they want for their life experience, and it all impacts that individual person. And so what I do after that first visit, usually a lot has been stirred up. And so on that first visit though, we really kind of enter into a partnership. So I give them one really, really simple exercise, and we'll kind of go over that at the end of the first visit, just to kind of set the stage. But then I give them, they have direct contact with me, and basically I ask them, if something comes into your awareness that, is important to your health goals, since we've stirred up so much, feel free to email me, anything that's stirred up. And so between the first session and the second session, I basically spend about 2 to 4 hours per patient just taking everything in and seeing where the vulnerabilities lie and how we can set a foundation for that patient so that they're no longer kind of going through this dance of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, where they can just constantly have like a nice flow and progression of forward movement, and so that they have a true way to kind of create that strong, resilient foundation. Because if you're only improving, even if it's at a slow pace, that's different than what most people are used to, especially when they've kind of gone through really, they've been through a lot, they've seen a lot of doctors, and nobody's really been able to tie every aspect together for them. So in the second visit, then we'll basically go over that foundation, what it looks like to them, and give them a really, really, really big picture overview. So we go over mindset, diet, lifestyle, anything therapeutic like supplements that can basically support that process. And that's when the true partnership begins. That's really, really where we begin to dive in, and we begin to see, okay, what can be realistic for you? Does this actually sound like it can work for you? Because my sole purpose within that first and second visit is to understand, how can this person begin? Where's their entry point? Maybe it's easier for them to start with exercise. Maybe it's easier for one person to start with taking supplements. Maybe just a mindset shift is maybe the most profound thing that person can begin with. But what I notice, and since we're talking about energy today, I'm interested in what can immediately bring energy back into that patient right away, right? And sometimes just a shift in mindset of focusing on the possibility, on understanding that they don't necessarily have to compromise on their health goals and their vision. Sometimes just that alone, being with a practitioner who sees that as truly possible for them, can bring energy back into the system. And so as long as energy is kind of, continuing to come back, the momentum, that brings so much momentum for forward movement. So I'm interested in primarily, where are their biggest vulnerabilities? How can we bridge those gaps? How can we lay a solid foundation to kind of get them progressing immediately so that they have more energy and so that they can kind of gain confidence in the fact that they are able to change. Even if it's something simple, I'm interested in that momentum because it will build and one thing will lead to another. Just like someone who starts, walking for 10 minutes a day, I've seen cases where that is so difficult at first, but really it's just the resistance almost at first, and that walk then turns into 30 minutes, and now they're running a half marathon, and they're excited about their marathon this year, So it all works together, but the key is just to begin and to have, so my sole purpose after that second session is how can we really partner together to actually make this happen, because I'm interested in getting results, and I'm interested in what can actually work for this patient. And so even though we have a really big picture overview within the context of the first two sessions, then it gets simple. Then we really are able to partner to see how can we actualize the experience that you want to bring into your reality. And that becomes the primary focus of the treatment. So that's kind of what I do in my practice.
Get that? Sounds pretty cool. Okay, so this is one of my favorite questions and my favorite answers from the last session. So we'll go there because I think for them to get an understanding of how you even got to this place of holistic medicine. So tell your story and how you found it and the story about you in college, because I think that that's important.
So, looking back, it's kind of interesting because my entire life, I felt like I was kind of in search mode, like something was missing. I grew up in a completely conventional home. My mom wasn't green by any means. And even though, she's into holistic medicine and whatnot now, I grew up in a totally conventional home. We went to traditional doctors. And I went through kind of a long series, like I had issues with acne, I had allergies, all kinds of different medical issues. And the conventional system didn't really intrigue me very much because it never seemed like there were true solutions, at least for me. I know for other people it can be highly effective and alleviate symptoms right away, but for me it was never truly effective. Even things like traditional counseling, we grew up in kind of a rocky, unstable home, and so my mom would take us to counselors and different things, and they would always just kind of look at me, evaluate me, and say, like, I think she's good, she's getting good grades, she is, like, involved in student council, on the golf team, whatever, right? So they kind of looked at me and checked the box, that I was fine, on to the next, and that never really sat with me. I always felt like there's something missing, something kind of like sterile about the entire process. And so I kind of, in the back of my mind, thought that there was something more, but I wasn't really sure what that looked like. And I kind of thought about it, looking back, quite a bit. And since, the talk today is on focus and motivation, looking back, I actually think one of the reasons I'm so motivated now is because I really know what it feels like to have the severe pain of stagnation and not knowing how to grow, not knowing how to move forward, not knowing how to put things together. And so I think that the pain of going through life like that for a really good 18 years, I think I will never forget that, and I will never take for granted, what I've come into contact now through a variety of books, practitioners, classes in college, all of that good stuff. But basically, nothing really worked. And it didn't really make sense to me that people would put different specialties or practitioners on a pedestal when things didn't seem to work for me. So I never really did, and I kind of knew that within myself I was going to have to find some serious answers, and that was going to be an explorative process. I think when I really started coming into true answers was when I was around 15 or 16, and I started playing golf. I ended up playing golf at University of Miami. And I would basically sit on the putting green and I would listen to all of these different books that were a little bit different in terms of golf psychology. And they talked a lot about being present or about being mindful. And that was kind of, I think, my first contact with what I'm doing today. So that kind of struck me as a little bit different. I was interested. It got me taking psychology courses at UM. And from there, I kind of so I was playing golf for my first 2 years of college, and I decided, I came in last in the golf tournament, and I just kind of sat with that, and I was on the phone with my dad, and he was like, Brooke, you can't keep going on like this. You can't come in last place, right? You're gonna need to basically work 10 times harder, all of these different things. And up until that point, I had really been working very, very hard, and it wasn't paying off, and I was exhausted. I was spread so thin. I was just totally burned out. And when my dad said that, for the first time, this sounds so silly, but for the first time in my entire life, I realized, oh wow, I don't have to play golf. I was in the business school at the time, and I love business, by the way. I was in the entrepreneurship program, and I think there's nothing more freeing than creating something, and bringing something to life. But at that point, until that point, something that was so hard, it was like the most eye-opening moment of my life, because I realized, oh, I don't actually have to do this. And it was the first time I realized I even had a choice, that I was living my life on autopilot. And that was a serious moment. And from there, a lot of things changed. I went into anthropology. I didn't even know what anthropology was, but I saw the room at UM, and you walk into it, and it's like the Chamber of Secrets. I was like, this is what I've been looking for. Because there's all of these old relics and all of these different things. And I started taking all of these medical anthropology classes where it talked about medicine from all around the world, different diets from all around the world, how healthy, our evolutionarily we were. And I started taking all of these evolutionary psychology classes and health psychology and mindfulness. And I kind of was experimenting a lot with the advice. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually working. I'm very intrigued. I never knew medicine could look like this. I never knew counseling could look like this. I never knew there were perceptions like this out there that could kind of open my eyes. And I was just so intrigued by the whole process. And from there, I actually met my first true mentor, I would say. I mean, I think that everybody goes through life and has a lot of mentors. I mean, everyone from my patients, I mean, they're teaching me the most on a daily basis, to the number of people that you run into, especially the people that challenge you, right? Some of your most difficult times are completely for you and can be the most teachable moments of your entire life. That's where all the untapped potential is. But I met this lady who really shifted my mindset completely, because when I sat down in her office for the first time, it was like she was able to see me and my potential when I would have never been able to see myself. And that's when I knew, okay, this is what I want to do for other people for the rest of my life, but first I need to go through this process myself. And the process never ends. It's completely continual. You keep growing deeper, you keep improving. That's just how life is. But that's when I really, really knew.
That's super cool. Okay, so one time I was camping, and I'm in India, guys, so there's all these families we were camping with, and this one girl wasn't there that normally is there, and I said, well, where is she? And they said, she has really bad migraines, and she couldn't leave the house today, and she just was really not feeling well. And then they said something about, she sees Dr. Brooke, and she's been helping her, and I'm like, oh my God, I know Dr. Brooke. So I've actually met one of your patients who is in high school now, I think she is. And so I know that you have quite a bit of clients, and you're doing really well with your practice. But what are some of the other reasons why people would come to you? What are some of the ailments they're having or things they're experiencing?
Absolutely. So I find that most people come to me for one of two reasons. One, they really want to optimize performance, so they're professional athletes, or they really want to just grow, optimize performance. They're sick of shiny objects. They're sick of being sold and marketed to, and this is the next best thing. They really want true progress where they continue, have an actual process that they're empowered and that they can learn to continue to move forward. And then I see a lot of people that have 8 or 10 different things going on, there's not maybe a clear-cut diagnosis, or maybe there's like 8 different diagnoses, and they've been to, tons of different doctors, but they can't seem to pull it together. So it all feels up in the air, very cluttered. They don't know how to truly take all of that information in and move forward. And so what I find with what I do, by creating a foundation, whether it's for a professional athlete or someone who has a lot going on health-wise, which, by the way, both of them always do. It's, the professional athlete may think they're coming into my practice healthy, but there's usually like 8 different things that we can work on, so it ends up being the same exact process, primarily. Maybe their motivation and focus is different coming in and what incentivizes them, but really, we're working on a lot of the same things with the same basics. But a lot of times people will come in with these complicated cases, and really what they're looking for is clarity, is order, is a strategic plan moving forward, and someone who kind of really has their back and can really be there to be on their team and support that journey. Someone where they can come to openly bounce ideas off of, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, we're here today to talk about energy, focus, and motivation. So let's go there for a minute and be clear on the next steps. And does anybody have any questions right now? So we can do that before we go into energy, motivation, and focus. Get ready to go there. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Brooke at this point? Okay. Wow, you guys are right. Okay, let's go there. Let's take them there.
Okay, cool. So much of the first couple of visits, and really, so like I've said before, I am not about shiny objects. I want to be so real with my patients. I don't believe in magical pills. I do not think that, I do believe in symptom relief, and that can assist in change and, bring a little bit of light and energy and motivation into the system. But I do not believe in a magical journey and a quick fix. I think everything really starts with you. But I think the beauty of that is once you're met with sometimes that kind of cold, harsh reality, then you can actually begin, and you can actually begin to make this progress and these changes. So primarily in the first, I would say, 4 months of working with a patient, my sole goal is to get the energy up in their system. Whether that's through getting them to sleep, maybe someone has insomnia and they're unable to sleep. Well, they're always going to have an issue with energy. Maybe it's learning how to say no, and I don't know if you guys have ever read a book called Essentialism, but it's an incredible book, put that on the list. It's a great book. But if if someone has trouble saying no, and they're strung out and burned out, and they're kind of overcompensating in all of those departments, they're always going to have that constant energy leak until they learn how to heal those relationships, and until they learn to see themselves as important, and kind of their time as important and valuable, and able to kind of own that and make it theirs. For example, certain dietary factors can take out a lot of energy. A lot of people don't do well with dairy products or certain chemicals in the food system, or gluten a lot of times. And so, sometimes that can create an energy leak. So the whole first 4 months is really where we're setting a foundation. We're looking at energy leaks, but at the same time, we're paying attention to our focus. And my focus with my patients is really to be proactive and bring them into a state of health creation where they can progress and have that, not to be delusionally positive by any means. I'm all about looking at the challenges and looking at the disease syndromes and the constellations that they're coming in with. But what we want to turn that into is a for you experience, right? We want to be able to learn from it, and we want to be able to see what's causing this, right? So when we place our focus on what we can do and kind of set an intent around where we're going, and kind of when my patients give themselves the space to enter into an uncompromised vision where they're not settling in any way, at least in it of themselves, right? I think one of the most interesting things, and this is going a little off topic, but it's really relevant to what we're talking about today. I think one of the most interesting things in the world is how we don't give ourselves permission to really go there and to want what we want and own that. Just within ourselves.
Is that what you mean by compromised vision?
So basically, what I want my patients to do is to create an uncompromised vision, right? Like, what do you actually want on a core level? You may not know what it looks like in terms of actual life reality, but maybe you want freedom, maybe you want to feel comfortable in your body, maybe you want to look in the mirror and see yourself as beautiful, or have confidence on a certain level, or be passionate about what you're up to in life. Maybe you want to heal your relationship with your partner, all of these different kinds of things. And so I really ask them to go there, like, what do you want? And to begin to own that and focus on that, so we can see what you need to let go of to get there, right? Like, what is holding you back from getting there? And when we can kind of have that uncompromised vision, it even makes the challenges that we encounter far more interesting, because then that's all untapped potential, and that's all things that we can begin to really look at and learn from, so that we can begin to let go of what isn't working and also optimize what is, because both will bring us through if we're able to shift our perception going into it. So that's where focus comes in. What can we do, right? And sometimes if we are not clear on our uncompromised vision, that's where getting things in order is really powerful. So getting our mindsets in order, our diets in order, our lifestyle in order, maybe doing some things to support us, surrounding ourselves with really, empowering people who believe in our visions as well, or even if that's maybe not a community that you're involved in, maybe it's a really cool podcast that lifts you up, or a book and an author just speaks to you in a certain way. I think all of that can contribute to bringing back energy, and it all can shift your focus and create kind of a very, very incredible momentum moving forward. Motivation is, so energy, focus, motivation, and drive, right? So motivation is pretty special, because that's where you find, okay, what motivates me? Now, often, external things will motivate people, right? Like whether it's, a specific career you're after, maybe you want to make a certain amount of money per year, maybe you're interested in something as tangible as reversing a very specific disease. All of these different things can, even though sometimes they're perceived as outside of us, can really be reverse engineered. And so I'm really interested in continually linking that back to my patients. So, for example, let's say you want to make a certain amount of money every year, right? Or have a certain salary with benefits or whatever. It's really important to recognize that you can reverse engineer that experience, and what do you truly want? Do you want the freedom? Do you want the experiences? Like, what do you truly want? Is it a feeling of value? Does it have to do with your self-worth? So what we want to do is kind of focus on those core things, like self-worth, like having freedom anyways, while moving towards those goals, because there's nothing wrong with allowing something external to motivate you. I actually think it can be a great thing, if you want that beach house. That's cool. Like, you can relax, like you can have a great time with your family. I mean, there's so much there, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the key is to remember that you're the common denominator, and that you can begin to have those experiences right now anyways. And so by bringing in those experiences and moving forward to that goal, or that particular goal, I think that that's key. I think something that motivates a lot of people, Tony Robbins actually talks a lot about this, is pain, right? Nobody wants to be in pain. A lot of times my patients will come to me and they're so scared of diseases, of what they already have, that they go their whole lives in a state of fear, trying to prevent that state, rather than being able to recognize, okay, I have tools now to really look at this fear and allow the fear to evolve. Fear can evolve. Fear is not something to be afraid of. We all have it. We all have those dark spaces within ourselves. And just by beginning to learn how to connect with it, it begins to evolve. And so I think that that's, pain in and of itself is a huge driver, and it is a huge motivator. Like I said at the beginning of the talk, I think the pain of severe stagnation and of not knowing how to grow, I think it's driven me probably up until I kind of realized that that was the primary driver, that maybe I was doing what I was doing to prevent that from ever happening again in my life. Maybe I was just continually recycling that pattern. And when I became more aware of it, I was able to expand more into my job, because I recognized, why would that be the case when I'm so aware of the fear? I can have a different motive. And I think motivation can change based on kind of your awareness. and your ability to process, different experiences through. A lot of my patients will come to me and they're scared of their own awareness because up until this point they have not known what to do with it. I think one of the most powerful things is when we can all realize that awareness is a gift, it's not a curse. But it really becomes a gift when you actually know what to do with it, how to address it, right? To begin to actually observe it, to connect with it, to not identify with it, to not see it as who you are. It's a part of your experience, but it's not who you are, right? And given the right tools in terms of learning how to connect with it and to be present, it turns the light on. And when the light is on, it's not as scary, right? Because now you can see it for what it is. It's just a fear is a fear is a fear.
Yeah.
We all have them. It's not we're not in the dark with it. We're not stumbling around anymore. Now we can see it for exactly what it is, so it can change. And I think in general, if we all get really clear with ourselves, motivation looks a lot more like growth and like health and like words that mean more, like a prosperity, a peace, a presence, than anything external. An internal fulfillment, right? All of those things I think are what truly motivate us, but it's the process of getting there and continuing to get there and allowing it to deepen along the way that can bring about continual motivation. And I think the drive is the commitment to that follow through. I think drive is just that commitment. So we set our intention, and then we have the commitment. We may have heart and have a certain sense of where we want to go, but we have to execute. So it's important to have both of those layers, and I think that is what basically each piece of that process, they all work together. They're all symbiotic in nature, and we need them all. And certain ones may come up more at certain points in our lives, but they truly all work together, and it's about getting clear on what drives you and where your pain lies and how that's assisted you, maybe in getting to where you are now. Maybe you're a straight A student, but it's all been based on fear. What if you were able, right? Or
for sure.
Of course, right? Most of the time it is.
Yeah.
We're perfectionists, right? We want to hold everything together because we're so scared of what if I let go? What if it falls apart? So now you're living inside this quote unquote perfect little world, but you're so scared of anything ever changing.
Yeah.
What if you actually allowed yourself to make the same exact choices that you were making being a perfectionist, but from a place of, oh my goodness, I get to create this, I get to choose. This can be exciting. This can be a very expansive, loving process where I'm able to kind of bring a new energy into the world versus trying to hold it together and feeling so distressed and contracted all of the time and always being scared of losing it. So I think that's the difference when it comes to motivation, and both work. Both are equally important parts of the process, and we all can understand and relate to each one.
Yeah.
But when we're able to actively shift a fear-based experience into one that's far more based on expansion and growth versus that contracted, distressed state, I think we can gain a lot more from it, and we can equally enjoy our life experience in the process, in the now, as we move forward, which makes life so much better. Because you don't have to change the life aspect at all at first. All you have to do is observe it, and actually you can make the same exact choices that you've been making all along, but if you are now enjoying the choices that you're making, or if you understand where the fears lie or what you need to look at, then you have the ultimate power of choice. This is something that is related in its own way, but one of the things that patients come in to me saying consistently is, I feel like there's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me? I feel crazy, all of these different things. I'm so, I should be so grateful for everything that I have. And the first thing I say to them is, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. Here's the thing. We put our identity into all of these external things, and because of that, our internal state is consistently fluctuating. Because all of our power is given to people, places, things, and situations, all of these life experiences that are seemingly external, right? Even though without us, they would not even exist, right? They wouldn't exist in the context of how they relate to us.
Right.
So one of the first interventions that I make with any single patient is to teach them, it's so simple, but who they are, right? Who who you are. That's the biggest question in the self-help world. Who are you? Okay, let me answer that. So, who are you, right? You're the power behind your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, your physiology, and your life experiences. So, that means that you have the power to choose how you perceive, how you interact with, and how you interpret these experiences. Now, how do you do that, right? How do you do that? Well, one is by, increasing awareness around perspectives that are empowering. But equally, you can only do that if you're present, if you're connected, right? If you're actually here, now, and receptive to learning learning about a new way to go about life and to perceive your reality. And so, by kind of detangling these different aspects, right? By recognizing that you are not your divorce, you are not your current relationship, you are not, I actually heard a quote once that said, you are your worst day. What if you went about your whole life believing you were your worst day? I have patients that come in and, this is a big deal in psychology, they're teaching their patients, a lot of times, I'm not saying all therapists, there's tons of great ones out there, but they teach their patients, you are anxiety, you are depression. Okay, how do you get out of that one, right? And that's not the case at all. You are the power behind each and every one of these experiences, and yes, they may be affecting you. Yes, they may be challenging you. Yes, there are certain patterns that do not work. There are certain life experiences that we've had in childhood, maybe it's very, very traumatic, that we don't want to like or recreate or even appreciate at this point. But if we can recognize that it was part of our life experience and own that so that we can change our perspective of it, now it can work for us. Now we can learn from it, and now that brings back all of the energy in the world when you're able to set yourself free in that way. And so that's the thing. Who are you, right? You're the power behind these experiences simply because you have the power to choose how you see these experiences in and of themselves. You don't need to change anything about your life, but if you change the way that you see these things, everything changes anyways. Now you can enjoy the relationship that you're in with a lot more clarity because now you're not constantly, your internal state is no longer fluctuating based on what your husband does or doesn't do. Now it's more along the lines of let me learn from this experience. And when you change, it messes up the entire pattern. People go in relationships their whole lives where A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, leads to E, leads to F, And so they go through these little patterns and it's the same circuit every single time. But what if you just pull and rip B out of the equation, right? And you give someone a hug or you just observe them rather than judge them. It changes the entire dynamic. And that's the power that you have is when you take full responsibility and ownership of how you enter into this world, the way other people interact with you changes too because now you're interacting with them in a different way. I'll give you one more example that I think is really highly relevant. A lot of times when we get, a ton of emails, right, or something, sometimes we just assume the worst. We're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this person just said this. But, so then we respond out of a really fear-based way, very reflexive. Maybe we get very defensive and we create a division between us and the person when we don't know the context of it. I think what can be really powerful is to be able to sit with things for a second and to be able to, if we're going to assume anything, we might as well assume the best. Not to be delusional about it or, up high in the sky, but because we'll feel better about our own responses if we're kind of curious and, connected and asking a question back. It brings a totally new dynamic to, the message in and of itself. And the beauty of it is now you feel more like yourself. You feel more connected. You're just trying to understand where the person's coming from so that you can actually make way and have a true solution versus getting caught up in this kind of division and kind of reflexively reacting versus being able to kind of respond in a way that feels really, really true to you. So,
Got it.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any questions?
Yep.
Do you see couples at the same time? I know you mentioned you have a lot of singular patients, and if you do, is it any different from how you handle the single patient since there's two people?
Absolutely.
In what way?
So I rarely see couples together, but I have. And basically, but I will only do it if they each kind of go through, at the very least, emotions with me, because we have to be on the same page, and I have to understand their vulnerabilities and their dynamics and what they're bringing into the equation and the dynamic of the couple before the lines get so blurred. You know what I mean? I want to understand that person's, kind of like where they're coming from, their story, so I'm clear about, okay, how can they continually focus on improving themselves and bringing their best self to the dynamic of the couple before it's just all in together, just to keep it very clear. And it's been, what's really special is when two people want to grow together and two people truly want a solution. What's hard, and where I haven't actually had this experience, luckily, but I could see it being very difficult if one person didn't want to change, you know, and one person was just going through the motions of the session in and of itself versus actually being there to find a solution. I could see that being very difficult, you know, but in my experience, both people have pretty much wanted a solution, and they both kind of came to me separately, and then we brought it into the dynamic of the couple. And then it is spectacular because both people are really, you know, learning how to communicate in such a direct way. Maybe we can clear patterns like being passive aggressive, because sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to ask the question you don't want to ask because you don't want to know the truth that you're about to receive. And sometimes those can be the simplest questions that are the scariest to ask. But if you have two people who truly love each other unconditionally, and even if they don't but want to grow, they can get there. So it can be really cool to see that dynamic.
Thank you. Any other questions, guys?
Do you work with youth ages 5 to 14? And if you do you approach it separately than you do adults?
Absolutely. So the majority of my patients are 18 and up, and mostly women, but I do work with children as well, but only if I speak to their parents first, and only if their parents are on the same page and really understand. I mean, I talk to all of my patients before they come on board because I want to know that they know what they're getting into, that it's a process, that it takes a full partnership between them and I, and things are going to have to change. They're actually going to have to put in the work. But for children, I need to know that the parent and I are on the same page, because I have seen cases where the parent and I aren't on the same page, and this has only happened twice. But it was so painful and excruciating to watch the child not get better because the parent and the parent wasn't completely, you know, willing to make some of the changes that I know would make the most profound difference, you know. Or at least given the chance, even if they gave it a chance, you know. And so a lot of times we'll talk about that before, and I take those cases far more seriously because we're dealing with a child, and I also know how important the parent is in that role. But when parents can come in together with their children, like I've seen quite a few mothers and daughters come in, and that's so cool because this child's illness or whatever they're going through can affect the health of the entire family. I actually see that quite a bit where the person who comes in, everybody's so interested in how, you know, they're feeling better and how they're progressing and what they can do. Maybe, you know, they're like losing weight and they're not even trying to, or whatever it is. But that catches people's attention, and so because the changes are often so simple, now the whole family's getting on board, now friends, all of these you know, different people. So it's an extraordinary ripple effect when it's a right fit, you know. But of course, it's not always going to be a right fit, you know. So,
Any other questions? Okay. So how can the people in the audience today take the steps to kind of unclear themselves? Or what are some things that they can actually take away today and do?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think really, okay. So I think how many freshmen do we have in here?
No, none.
Okay,
They're
none. All juniors and seniors.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you guys are at such a pivotal place in your lives where you're about to kind of, you know, enter into this really cool next chapter. And I think it's really important to own exactly where you are. Don't feel like you have to get ahead of yourself. Own where you are. People want to help juniors and seniors achieve and get to that next step. So I think a lot of times when you're in kind of a transitional phase, you can see that as I don't have you can look at everything that you're not, right? Or everything that you don't have.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really, really important to use the resources available to you right now in the present moment. You have this incredible school, this incredible community, and use that. Use the fact that you're a junior and you're a senior, and that people are going to want to help you. They're going to want to mentor you, and they're going to want to build you up. And if they don't, they're not a right fit anyways. And so I think just really owning what you have. In my practice, a lot of times I will see, these professional athletes, right? Or these really incredible psychiatrists, or these CEOs with, a CV like nothing I've ever seen before. And every single one of them does not believe that they're enough at first, right? All they are focused on is what they don't have, or maybe they feel like, because I have these issues, right? How can I help this patient? Or because I don't have this down, how am I going to win this tournament? So the reason I say that is because at every stage in our lives, we're going to have patterns that arise. But that's the importance of recognizing that you are more than enough, that you are not your resume. You are not where you're at in your life stage. You're the power behind it all. And if you can focus on taking those steps, focus on what you can do, and appreciating, upping the value of all of your experiences, that will lead you in the direction of where you're meant to go, where you want to go. But it's just having that faith and taking action and knowing that everything is working for you. So because of that, sink in, allow it to unravel, allow what is to turn into what isn't, but be on your own team at the same time and recognize that you're more than capable of having everything that you want. Anything is possible, within the context of this world. But if somebody else can do it, you can too. And actually, you'll do it differently. You'll do it in your own way. It's going to be incredible. And I think focusing on your resources right here, right now, and allowing it to take you to where you want to go, to where you're leading yourself into, and being on your own team is the most valuable advice I could give to someone who's in a transitional phase. And when that seed of doubt comes in, address it, talk back to it. Say, no, I don't really believe you. I'm not going to be giving any of my power over to you because I can do this, and continuing focusing on those strengths, and while equally observing the weaknesses and bridging the gaps, filling them in, actively addressing those too, because that's all part of it. Your challenges and your vision will both propel you forward if you allow it to. So,
Yeah, I think definitely that college is a transitional period in your life. You guys will, 5 years from now, you're going to look back and forget a lot of what you're dealing with now. But there's so much available to you while you're here at UCF that you can use to leverage yourself, go forward, and open so many doors that you've got to open as many as you can based on how you are different than others and what you want out of life. And we had a question, I know, about getting to the dream, whatever their dreams are, whatever the ultimate thing they want to do is, what are some pieces of advice maybe that they can work on now to see that?
So I think, here's the thing. If you have that dream and that uncompromised vision of how you see your world being, right? Hold that, but go deeper with it, right? Allow life to work for you and for it to make it better. If we get fixated on a certain path for ourselves, life can't work for us. The opportunities that we have available can't work for us. The thing is the mind, although it's powerful, it's really just our power, and it can be very limited. It's all about what we see. It's all about what we sense. It's all about what's right in front of us, right? But if we're working from a different place, we can allow things to unfold, and we can optimize what's actually available to us, and it can turn out far better than we could ever begin to imagine or comprehend. But we have to get out of our own way, right? We have to be on our own team, and we have to let go of attachment to certain outcomes, of fixating on certain things, because what that does is it narrows our field of vision, and it doesn't allow us to work with life. But there's nothing wrong with having that vision, but I think it's important to focus on what you can do now. Just allow it to be that guide while maintaining that receptive, flexible nature moving forward.
Yeah, that's good advice. Any questions, you guys? We have a few more minutes. Is this resonating with you, or is everybody kind of getting something out of this?
How do you deal with rejection? Because I know we, in college, will do a lot of things like internships, for example. I know you mentioned not putting yourself as like a resume.
Yeah.
But what do you do when you're not, nothing's cutting it?
Oh, believe me, you guys, in rejection, it will come in many forms, in many ways, and we'll all go through it. Failure competition, I had that up earlier, we actually have a failure competition, where we celebrate failure.
Wow.
And we pay money for good failure.
That's amazing.
And we
pay money for
we
good
do, we pay $500 for the best
Oh my
failure, and a letter of recommendation
Can
from
I
the
enter
journal.
that competition?
But I love the rejection question. But yeah, we celebrate failure here at Wild because we think it's critical in your growth.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
With rejection, we have got to get objective. So first and foremost, it's only the mind that tags meaning to different things, and it often sees everything as a threat, right? Because the ego influences the mind, and the ego is a survival mechanism. It's all about, threat, and then it wants to divide us from the threat, and alarm bells go off, and it creates even more division because it doesn't like change, right? It doesn't like change because change means growth, and it's very comfortable with stagnation and being where we are. So if we change our perception of rejection to looking at it in a way that everything happens exactly the way it's meant to, and it's equally happening for us, that alleviates some of the pain that can come with it, but equally, more important than anything, it's important not to reject yourself and to identify with that rejection. It's really very important to begin to acknowledge and embrace yourself for who you truly are, recognize that you're not broken, that there is nothing wrong with you. We all have patterns, some work, some don't. The ones that don't are have potential, the ones that do, let's keep optimizing them. When we put it within that frame and within that structure, we can move through everything. Equally, if a loved one was rejected, right? You would just show love to them. You would be there for them. You would be on their own team. You would be on their team. We have to begin to do that for ourselves as well. We have to begin to love ourselves no matter what. And that's a process, and that deepens. But unconditional love means that there aren't any conditions, right? And that means that with rejection, with failure, with these different things, let's support ourselves through fundamentals, and equally through our perception and not buying into it and getting caught up in rejection, right? Equally, not blaming ourselves or fixating on it. What we want to do is we want to connect to it. We want to look at it. We don't want to look up or down at it. We don't want to make it less important or more important than what it is. But we want to look at it and we want to learn from it. We really want to learn from it. Maybe it's there to teach us not to reject ourselves, to be there for ourselves the entire process. Maybe it's just not meant for us, and it's about letting go of the fixation that's involved, or looking at how it's meshed in our identity and clearing that web up. So we have to learn from it. We want to take these experiences that move us, that create the contracted state. That's a signal. We want to look at that. We want to learn from it. And when we learn from it, it automatically lets go of us because we're letting go of it. It can come full circle, and that's how growth happens, But we can never be scared of growth. And I'm sure, and I can say that now, and it can just be verbiage, but you'll begin to experience it because with growth, it's like, yes, sometimes we can be so scared of our own power or that sense of being alive or the burn that comes with change. But it's almost just reallocating that pain. Would you rather have the freedom that comes with the burn of change and that kind of fire of being alive? Or would you rather, get caught up in this severe pain and stagnation of not knowing how to move forward? So that's where courage comes in, and that's a really important piece of the process because that will keep you centered, that will keep you on your own team, and that will keep you proud of yourself when you need it most,
That was a really good answer.
It is true though, it's all true, important, that we know this and we understand this stuff. Any other questions? It takes a while for you to do the Q&A piece of it.
I'm so glad you guys are here.
Guys are
Thanks for
quiet.
hanging out with me. Yeah.
Could you just tell me some of your favorite books?
Sure. So I love Upside of Stress by Dr. Kelly McGonigal is her name. Essentialism is a great book. I'm trying to think of some other good ones. I write a lot on my website. I give a ton of free information out on my website, and I always am putting the new things I'm reading on there. I'm trying to But yeah, feel free to email me as well, and I'll try to think of some of my favorites and send them to you.
Okay.
I like things that are practical, that work, that are kind of tried and true across all realms, science, but also applicable and experience. So that's kind of what I look for when I'm looking about, ideas and things to bring in is does it actually work? And it sounds like such a simple question, but so much in this world doesn't work that it kind of becomes quite special when it does,
And then I'll just leave us on this question, unless anybody else has a question, just raise your hand if you do. What are some trends going on in holistic medicine that we might not be aware of?
Absolutely. So I think we may not be aware of them on a conscious level, but I think we can all feel the shift, and I think it's actually pretty cool. It's all about personalization now. It's about making our lives easier. How can we make health more convenient? I think it's equally about patient empowerment and taking ownership of our own health experience. I think that's a really, really powerful trend that's kind of going on in the health world. And we can see that through specialty testing like 23andMe, Biome, different technologies that are out. We can even go run our own comprehensive blood reports now and read them ourselves. And so I think, something that there's a lot of flack about in the medical world is Google, right? That, doctors don't like patients' ability to search. I think it's the world's greatest thing because you know your body better than anyone, and to be able to have some information at the tips of your fingers is really, really cool. And I think people don't like it because it's challenging, and sometimes their patients, that know more about their health than they may. So,
Yeah.
which is what I love that. So.
Unless you're hypochondriac, and then Google's not your friend.
Yeah, but then just shift your perception and use it as an
And
empowering
then when you
experience.
come to you, so you can shift it all. Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Brooke. I think everybody
Thank
learned a
you.
lot.